Shalom, family, and welcome back to the Semitic Jew channel, where we read the New Testament as the continuation of Israel's covenant story and not the birth of a new religion. Today, we move to the book of Colossians. Colossians is a warning letter. Paul is not correcting open rebellion like in Corinth, and he's not dealing with persecution like in the book of Philippians. Here, Paul is protecting Israel from something that is more subtle, things like philosophy, things like mysticism, and even false authority. Let's break it down. Number one, who were the Colossians? They were Israelites in Asia Minor. That's Colossians chapter 1. Colossae was located in Asia Minor, a region filled with scattered Israelites living under Greek and Roman cultural influence. In other words, they were colonized, living in colonial territory. Paul addresses them as, quote, saints and faithful brethren in Christ. That's Colossians chapter 1, verse 2. Once again, we see the language of saints. Israel being those saints and brethren being the covenant family. Paul assumes that they already know the scriptures. They already know the God of Israel. They also already know the covenant promises. So this is not some missionary evangelism. This is internal instruction for the people of Israel. Number two, the Messiah's supremacy. The Messiah's supremacy protects Israel from false teaching. That's Colossians chapter 1 as well. Paul immediately establishes the supremacy of the Messiah. He is the image of the invisible God, and by him were all things created. So why does Paul start with that type of declaration? Because false teachers were blending Greek philosophy, mysticism, angel worship, and even ascetic practices. Paul makes it clear Israel does not need intermediaries except for the Messiah. We don't need the secret knowledge. We don't need cosmic hierarchies. We don't need any of that. We only need Christ alone. Number three, reconciliation. Reconciliation is covenant restoration. It's not universal theology. That's also Colossians chapter 1. Paul says Israel was once alienated, enemies in mind, separated. And this sort of language echoes prophetic language about Israel being in captivity, being slaves in a region that was not their home. Reconciliation here is not about the whole world becoming Israel. It is about Israel becoming restored back to God through the Messiah. And Paul is explaining this type of covenant healing. Number four, mystery. The mystery again equals scattered Israel. That's Colossians chapter 1, verse 26 to 27. Paul says the mystery is Christ in you, the hope of glory. This is often preached universally, but Paul defines the audience. He says to his saints is Israel. The mystery is not that the Gentiles can be saved. The mystery is that Israel scattered among the nations would be restored without temple control. Number five, warning against philosophy and vain deceit. That's Colossians chapter 2. So this is the heart of the letter right here. Paul warns, he says, look, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. He says, don't let any man spoil you through philosophy or vain deceit. So this is not anti-thinking. This is not, hey, disregard logic altogether. It is anti-Greek systems replacing the Bible, replacing covenant truth. Israelites were being pressured to adopt the philosophical speculation, things like evolution, rather than the creation account. And then also to submit to mystical hierarchies, things like psychology and how to raise your children, XYZ. Those things are philosophical in nature, and they follow man-made traditions. They submit to false authority. And the thing is we need to understand that the source of support in our minds should always be the Bible. And Paul reminds them, he says, ye are complete in him. Well, being complete in him means that we need to read the Bible and apply the Bible. Israel does not need additions to the covenant. We only need the scriptures. Number 6, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances. That explains, or it is explained in Colossians chapter 2. This passage is often abused. Paul is not saying God's law was erased or that the books of the prophets were abolished. He is referring to the record of debt, the charges against Israel, the condemnation due to disobedience. The Messiah removes the penalty, not the covenant. He removes the punishment, not anything else. Number 7, do not let anyone judge you. That is Colossians chapter 2. So Paul warns Israel not to let outsiders judge them regarding things like the Sabbath, things like holy days, things like new moons. Of course, you're going to be judged for those things because the nations don't participate in those things. They believe that the laws are done away with. These are Israelite covenant markers. Paul is not telling Israel to stop keeping them. He is telling Israel not to let non-covenant authorities redefine them or cause them to be led astray. Number 8, put off the old man, put on the new. That's Colossians chapter 3. So Paul transitions to lifestyle. Paul says Israel must reject former pagan behaviors, walk in holiness, love one another, live as one body. Again, this is covenant renewal language. It's not about church morality. Number 9, order. Order matters. Order, authority, and faithfulness. That is Colossians chapter 3 and 4. Paul addresses families, households, authority, conduct. That is the whole 9. But why? Because Israel living in foreign lands must remain disciplined, orderly, faithful, distinct. Those are things that we need to do while we're in captivity. So Paul ends by greeting fellow Israelites, again, reinforcing the family nature of the letter. Here's the closing message. The book of Colossians is a warning to Israelites. Do not let philosophy, mysticism, tradition, or false authority replace covenant truth. Colossians teaches us that the Messiah, Christ, is sufficient, and the covenant must not be diluted. Authority belongs to God, not the system in which we are living under. So this book protects Israel from losing itself intellectually and spiritually. If this teaching brought clarity, please like, share, and subscribe. The next book, 1 Thessalonians. Shalom, Israel, and I'll see you in the next one.